Today we'll be reviewing SOL 6.3, which is our lesson on integers. Now if you remember, an integer is any positive or any whole number and its opposite. So an integer is any whole number and its opposite. Whole number and its opposite. And if you think about it, an integer are our numbers that are on the number line. There are 1, 2, 3, any counting number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or even our negatives, -1, -2, -3, and so forth like this. It's the ones, if you look down here, we have a number line. And opposites means they're the same distance from 0. +3 and -3 are opposites. Now we did talk about some real-world ways to show positive and negative numbers. We talked about above sea level would be positive integer, above 0 degrees, gain, raise, those would both be positive. And there's many other things that can represent positive integers. If you're swimming upwards, if you're climbing a mountain, you represent a positive integer. If you're ascending, it's a positive. And then we talked about negative integers. Negative integers below sea level, below 0 degrees, a loss. Maybe if you're talking about money, we'll put a withdrawal. Ooh, I forgot. The opposite of withdrawal over here under the positive would be deposit. We're talking about money. So withdrawal and deposit, maybe you want to add those to the list. So we have positive and negatives. They can be opposite numbers. But remember 0. 0 is kind of our special one right here in the middle, and I want to highlight this. 0 is neither negative nor positive. It doesn't fit in either category. 0 is its own special. It breaks up your negative and your positive numbers. So 0 is neither positive nor negative. So our positives that go to the right, negatives go to the left. And if you remember, when we talked about when you go to compare and order integers, left means less. That means if you graph your numbers on a number line, and by graphing, let's say I asked you to graph -3. You would go up to -3 and you would put a dot on it. So if I ask us to graph numbers, whichever one's further to the left is going to be your less. So let's look at our example. Our example literally says, order from least to greatest. So I'm going to graph these first. So I already graphed -3. Let's graph -5. So if you remember graphing, we simply put a dot on it. We're going to graph 0. Going to graph 5, and we're going to graph 4. Now I know some of you can look at this and know least to greatest without needing to graph, but know the concept of how to do it. So if we looked at our graph, we know left means less. That means the one over here to the left is the smallest, -5, and then as we move right, they're getting bigger, -3, 0, 4, and 5. And kind of a thing I know we talked about back in the fall is negatives are weird. The one that looks bigger, quote unquote, is actually smaller. So -5 looks bigger, but it's actually smaller because of those negatives. So left means less when you go to compare them. And then the last thing we talked about when we did integers was absolute value. And absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So the distance a number is from 0. And if you remember, distance is always positive. That means absolute value is always positive. So I'm going to add that down here. But it's always positive. Because when you count on a number line how far away something is, you can only count positives. So -7, let's look at these two examples. -7, remember these two lines mean absolute value, so I would read this as the absolute value of -7 equals, well, we know it equals 7, because if we count it up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -7 is 7 away from 0. And these lines, once again, means the absolute value of 5. And the absolute value of 5 would be 5, because it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're both 5 away from 0. So you always just take the number on the inside and make it a positive. If it's already a positive, then you leave it a positive. So the absolute value. And we have now just summed up integers. You are ready to go ahead and do these 4 problems on the bottom. And then if you flip over to the back side, there are additional problems you need to complete.